The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation sparkled like a jewel carved from pure starlight, its crystalline walls refracting the glow of 1,000 distant suns. Around the massive circular table, representatives of the most powerful spacefaring civilizations lounged in various states of boredom and mild irritation. Some floated, some slithered, some simply existed in ways that defied conventional physics, but they all shared the same expression of supreme annoyance at being called to yet another emergency session. High Chancellor Zixanax, a being composed entirely of shifting geometric patterns, pulsed with barely contained frustration. Ambassador Cathiel, you mean to tell me that you've summoned the full council over a species that hasn't even achieved reliable faster-than-light travel? The Cathiel ambassador, a towering insectoid with iridescent wings that caught the starlight, clicked her mandibles nervously. Chancellor, with all due respect, the humans are different. When our scout ships eliminated one of their outposts in the Proxima system— You mean when your pirates attacked their mining operation, interrupted Councillor Drom, his gelatinous form rippling with amusement. The other council members chittered and buzzed with laughter. As I was saying, Cathiel continued, her antennae twitching in annoyance, when that incident occurred, we expected them to abandon the system. Instead, they've increased their presence. They're not just defending, they're hunting our ships. They've somehow adapted their primitive fusion drives to match our quantum displacement engines. From the shadows, Ambassador Vrax of the Sentinel Collective emerged, his crystalline body casting prismatic patterns across the chamber. The Cathiel speaks truth. My people have observed similar behavior. These humans, they don't stop. When faced with superior technology, they don't cower. They adapt, they reverse engineer, they improve. Preposterous, the Chancellor's patterns shifted to aggressive angles. You expect us to believe that a species barely out of their gravity well poses a threat to civilizations that have ruled the stars for millennia. Next, you'll tell us they've mastered psychic abilities. The chamber erupted in laughter again, but Vrax remained still. Chancellor, we're not asking you to believe they're a threat. We're warning you that if we continue to underestimate them, they will become one. My analysis suggests— Your analysis? A new voice cut through the chamber belonging to General Zith of the Dominion Forces. The cybernetic warrior's artificial eyes glowed with disdain. The same analysis that predicted the Regelian uprising would last a standard cycle. How long did we spend crushing that rebellion? 3 days. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. The council had heard enough of these dire warnings about upstart species. They'd crushed hundreds of civilizations that dared to challenge the galactic order. These humans would be no different. As the session dissolved into bureaucratic squabbling, Ambassador Cathiel and Vrax exchanged knowing looks. They had tried. When the storm came, and it would come, at least they could say they had warned them. The humans had a saying that the Cathiel intelligence networks had picked up: fuck around and find out. The Galactic Council was about to do exactly that. 3 standard cycles after the council meeting, the Cathiel pirates struck again. This time, they targeted New Darwin, humanity's largest extrasolar research facility, orbiting Proxima Centauri b. The raid was supposed to be simple: swoop in with superior technology, grab the antimatter research data, and vanish before the primitive humans could even track their quantum signatures. The pirates didn't expect to find 30 heavily armed research vessels waiting for them. Status report, demanded Captain Ricard, watching in horror as another of his ships erupted into quantum fire. The human vessels moved with impossible precision, their supposedly primitive weapons somehow tracking and hitting ships in quantum displacement. Sir, we've lost the Void Cutter and Storm Talon. His sensor officer's mandibles clacked in panic. The humans, they're using some kind of modified mining laser. It's disrupting our quantum fields. Impossible, they couldn't have developed countermeasures so quickly. But the evidence was exploding all around them. The humans had taken their mining equipment tools, designed to carefully extract resources from asteroids, and turned them into weapons that could tear apart advanced warships. Back in the council chamber, the emergency session had a decidedly different tone from the previous meeting. The holographic display showed the aftermath. 7 Cathiel raiders destroyed, their quantum-encrypted data cores somehow extracted and cracked open like appetizers at a diplomatic dinner. How? High Chancellor Zixanax's geometric patterns had lost their usual symmetry. How did they adapt so quickly? Ambassador Cathiel stepped forward, her wings tight against her body, in a gesture of grim satisfaction. "We've intercepted their communications. Apparently, after our first interaction, they began running combat simulations, thousands of them. They took every scrap of sensor data from the first raid and ran it through something they call war games. They weren't just planning for another attack. They were actively hoping for it." General Zhith's cybernetic implants whirred as he processed this information. "You mean to tell me these primitives used a single encounter to develop effective countermeasures against quantum displacement technology? Technology that took the Dominion 3 centuries to perfect." "Oh, it gets better," Vrax added, his crystalline form vibrating with what might have been amusement. "They've already reverse-engineered the quantum cores from the destroyed ships. Their scientists are calling it the greatest technological leap since the microprocessor. They're celebrating." Councillor Drom's gelatinous form rippled with disbelief. "Celebrating? Their colony was just attacked." "Yes," Cathiel confirmed. "They're calling it a successful field test of their new defense systems. And," she hesitated, "they're already manufacturing more weapons, a lot more." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some members demanded immediate military action to crush this upstart species. Others called for diplomatic intervention. A few simply tried to pretend this wasn't happening. "There's something else," Vrax added, silencing the chamber. "We've detected unusual movement in their solar system. They're fortifying every major colony, yes, but they're also building ships. Not defensive platforms, attack vessels. They're not preparing to defend, they're preparing to hunt." "Hunt? Hunt what?" The Chancellor's patterns had become completely chaotic. "Everything," Cathiel answered. "They've designated all Cathiel vessels as hostile, regardless of their purpose. Military, civilian, diplomatic, they're not distinguishing. As far as they're concerned, the Cathiel attacked their people and now every Cathiel ship is a legitimate target." "That's barbaric," Drom exclaimed. "They can't possibly think they can take on an entire spacefaring civilization." "Actually," Vrax's crystalline form darkened, "their exact words were, 'They fucked with the wrong species.' They're not trying to take on the Cathiel civilization. They're going to systematically hunt down every single ship that was involved in the raids and anyone who tries to protect them." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They had assumed humanity would behave like every other emerging civilization, bow to superior technology, accept their place in the galactic hierarchy, and gradually be allowed to join galactic society over centuries of careful observation. Instead, humanity had taken their first bloody nose, analyzed the attackers' techniques, developed countermeasures, and was now preparing for revenge. All in less than 3 standard cycles. The High Chancellor's patterns finally stabilized into a rigid geometric grid. Perhaps we should consider opening diplomatic channels." "Too late," Cathiel said. "They're already hunting." The Galactic Intelligence Archive was rarely this crowded. Analysts from a dozen species huddled around holographic displays, watching with growing unease as reports flooded in from across the frontier sectors. Each report told the same story. The humans were everywhere and they weren't stopping. "Look at this," muttered Analysis Chief Pelthor, his bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with anxiety as he pulled up another incident report. "They tracked a Cathiel privateer through 17 different quantum jumps. 17. Even our best military vessels give up after 5 or 6. His colleague, a Vraxian data interpreter named Krista, shifted her crystalline structure to examine the data. "How are they maintaining quantum lock for so long? Their technology shouldn't be capable of—" "That's just it," Pelthor interrupted. "They're not using quantum tracking at all. They're using something they call psychological prediction, combined with basic energy signatures. They're guessing where their targets will go based on behavior patterns, and they're right 89% of the time." Across the archive, similar conversations were taking place. A group of Dominion military observers watched footage of a human pursuit vessel deliberately diving into an asteroid field to maintain chase. The humans had lost 3 ships in the process but had caught their target. "They're insane," whispered Commander Shithtal, General Shith's subordinate. "Look at the crew reactions. They're laughing. They're treating this like some kind of game." In another corner, Cathiel anthropologists were reviewing human historical records, their mandibles clicking in distress. "It's all here in their history," one explained to the gathered crowd. "They used to hunt prey animals by simply following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. They called it persistence hunting. They're using the same technique in space. The archives were filled with similar examples. Humans chasing pirates through radiation belts that would kill most species. Human ships running on minimal life support to extend their range. Human crews volunteering for high-risk missions with an enthusiasm that disturbed their alien observers. "Have you seen the latest?" A junior analyst burst into the main chamber, waving a data crystal. "They've started offering bounties, not just for the original raiders, for anyone who helps them escape. They're calling it accessory to crimes against humanity." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just hunting their attackers, they were systematically cutting off every possible avenue of escape or assistance. Pelthor's tentacles wrapped around his console as he pulled up another report. "They've started broadcasting messages in Cathil trading frequencies. Listen to this. To all Cathil vessels and allies, harbor our enemies, become our enemies, there is no statute of limitations on justice." "What's a statute of limitations?" someone asked. "It's a human legal concept," Krista explained, her crystalline form dimming. "It means some crimes can't be forgiven just because time has passed. They're telling the galaxy they'll never stop hunting." In the lowest levels of the archive, the most disturbing reports were being compiled. Humans retrofitting mining ships into combat vessels. Human diplomats studying alien psychology to better predict escape routes. Human scientists working around the clock to reverse engineer captured technology. A message from Ambassador Cathil flashed across all screens. The Council still refuses to acknowledge the full threat. They believe this is a temporary outburst that will burn itself out. They don't understand that for humans the hunt itself is energizing them. Every success drives them to seek more. Pelthor looked around the chamber at his fellow analysts, all of them processing the same terrifying conclusion. The humans weren't going to stop. The Council's dismissal of their capabilities had created exactly what they'd been warned about, a species with the motivation, capability, and now the technology to challenge the galactic order. "Send another warning to the Council," he ordered, knowing it would likely be ignored like all the others. "Mark it urgent. They need to understand this isn't just about revenge anymore. The humans are treating this as a test case. They're learning how to fight the entire galaxy." The High Chancellor's decision would later be recorded as the greatest military miscalculation since the Dawn Wars. Convinced that humanity needed to be put in their place, Zixanax authorized what was supposed to be a show of force. A Dominion battle fleet would appear over Earth, demonstrate their overwhelming technological superiority, and demand humanity's immediate surrender and submission to galactic authority. General Shith himself led the fleet, his flagship emerging from quantum space alongside 500 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. The message he broadcast was meant to inspire awe and terror. Humanity, witness the power of... The first antimatter torpedo hit his shields before he could finish the sentence. "Status report," Zith barked as his ship rocked from multiple impacts. His tactical display was chaos. Human vessels were emerging from hidden positions throughout their solar system, many using powered-down asteroids as cover. "Sir, we're detecting weapons platforms on their moon. They've stripped entire continents of resources to build. By the eternal void, their whole system is militarized." The humans had been busy during their hunting expeditions. Every piece of captured technology, every scrap of data from their victories against the Cathil had been repurposed and mass-produced. What the Dominion fleet faced wasn't a primitive civilization cowering before superior firepower. It was a species that had spent months preparing for exactly this scenario. On Earth, the United Defense Command was having the time of their lives. "Package delivered to Target Group 7, announced Admiral Chen, watching as a cluster of quantum disruption mines detonated in the midst of the alien formation. "Would you look at that? Their fancy quantum fields don't handle good old-fashioned nuclear explosions very well." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The humans didn't fight like a civilization defending against superior forces. They fought like they'd been waiting for this chance. Every asteroid belt had been turned into a kill zone. The gas giants' magnetic fields had been weaponized into ship-destroying traps. Even their orbital debris had been strategically positioned to create navigation hazards. In the Council chamber, the real-time battle feeds caused near panic. "They're using their own civilian ships as kamikaze weapons." Councillor Drom's gelatinous form was practically vibrating with horror. The crews are volunteering for suicide runs. Ambassador Cathiel's wings drooped. I tried to tell you, humans don't think like us. When they're threatened, they don't calculate odds of survival. They calculate how to cause maximum damage. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the mighty Dominion fleet was in ruins. General Scyth's flagship, crippled and burning, received a transmission from Earth's command center. Thanks for the delivery of additional technology samples. Your contribution to human advancement has been noted. But the real breaking point came after the battle. Instead of celebrating their victory, humanity went to work. The United Defense Command issued what would become known as the Phoenix Protocol, total mobilization of the entire species. Every shipyard, every factory, every research facility switched to military production. The humans didn't just copy the captured Dominion technology, they improved it. Within days, they were mass-producing hybrid ships that combined their own rugged engineering with advanced alien tech. In the Galactic Intelligence Archive, Pelthor watched the sensor feeds with a mixture of awe and terror. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Look at these production numbers. They're converting their entire economy to war footing. Krista's crystalline form had taken on a deep red hue of alarm. They're expanding their definition of targets. Any civilization that supported the Dominion attack is now classified as hostile. They're planning systematic operations against multiple species simultaneously. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, had managed to achieve something unprecedented. They had convinced humanity that the entire galaxy was a potential threat, and humans, true to form, had decided to deal with this threat in the most human way possible by hitting back harder. Ambassador Vrax appeared in the archive via quantum projection, his crystalline form almost transparent with stress. The humans have issued their response to the Council's demands for surrender. You need to see this. The message was short, broadcast on all frequencies in every known galactic language. To the Galactic Council and all affiliated species, you came to our home, you tried to make us kneel, instead you taught us how your weapons work. Consider this our resignation from galactic civilization. We'll be dismantling your power structure ship by ship, fleet by fleet, species by species. You wanted to show us our place in the galaxy? We're about to show you yours. Regards of humanity. In the silence that followed, Pelthor's tentacles curled in resignation. Well, he said to no one in particular, at least we won't have to write any more warning reports. The breaking point had passed. The hunt was no longer about revenge or justice. Humanity had decided the galaxy needed a complete reorganization, and they had appointed themselves as the reorganizers. The Council had wanted to put humanity in their place. Instead, they had given humanity a reason to put everyone else in theirs. The humans had a saying that quickly spread through terrified alien communication channels: divide and conquer. As it turned out, they were exceptionally good at both parts. The first phase of their campaign was almost elegant in its simplicity. Human diplomats approached every minor species that had suffered under Council rule, offering a straightforward deal. Stay neutral, and they'd be left alone. Better yet, they'd get to watch their former oppressors burn. It's absolutely brilliant, muttered Pelthor, watching another alliance declaration dissolve in real time. They're not even having to fight half the galaxy. They're just offering front-row seats to the show. The Vraxian Collective was the first major power to declare neutrality, their crystalline ships quietly withdrawing from Council space. Ambassador Vrax's final message to the Council was a masterpiece of diplomatic shade. We warned you, now we'll watch and learn. The Cathiel were the first primary target. Humanity hadn't forgotten who started this dance after all. Their campaign against the Insectoid Empire was a textbook example of systematic destruction. They're not just attacking our military installations, reported a panicked Cathiel commander. They're targeting our supply lines, our trading partners, our fuel refineries. They're dismantling our entire infrastructure. Human ships would appear simultaneously across dozens of systems, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. They'd learned well from their early hunting days. Now they were applying those lessons on a galactic scale. In the Council chamber, now meeting virtually because physical gatherings had become too risky, the reports grew worse by the day. The Dominion's third fleet has gone dark, General Scyth announced, his cybernetic implants sparking with stress. The humans didn't destroy it. They somehow convinced half the crews to mutiny. They're saying something about better retirement benefits. Councillor Drom's gelatinous form had shrunk to half its normal size. They're using our own psychological profiles against us. Remember those diplomatic missions they sent out last cycle? They weren't negotiating, they were studying our weaknesses. The humans had taken everything they'd learned from hunting down pirates and scaled it up. Their ships now carried advanced AI systems that could predict quantum jump patterns. Their weapons had been refined through countless engagements, but most terrifying was their coordination. They're everywhere at once, Pelthor explained to his increasingly nervous colleagues in the archive. Look at these attack patterns. They're not trying to hold territory or establish supply lines. They're operating like a swarm of particularly angry insects, no offense to the Cathil. The archive's displays showed the extent of human operations, simultaneous strikes across thousands of light-years, hit-and-run attacks that crippled major military installations, and perfectly timed diplomatic revelations that shattered centuries-old alliances. One particularly devastating operation targeted the Council's financial networks. Humans leaked proof that several Council members had been profiting from illegal technology transfers. The resulting chaos caused 3 major trading confederations to switch sides overnight. They're not fighting a war, Krista realized, her crystalline form resonating with dawning comprehension. They're conducting pest control. They're treating the entire Council leadership like an infestation that needs to be systematically eliminated. The first major victory came when the Cathil Empire formally surrendered. The terms were surprisingly lenient. Hand over the original pirates who'd started this mess, cut ties with the Council, and agree to human oversight of their military activities for the next century. See? The human diplomatic broadcast was practically dripping with false sweetness. We can be reasonable. Who's next? The Council's response was to increase military production and fortify their core worlds. The humans' counter-response was to release detailed corruption files about every major Council member to their respective populations. The resulting internal upheavals did more damage than any military strike could have achieved. They've turned the entire galaxy into one giant hunt, Pelthor observed, watching another Council member's government collapse under public pressure. And the scariest part? I think they're actually enjoying this. A new human transmission appeared on all frequencies. Attention Council species. Your leadership fed you lies about human limitations. Now they're hiding in fortified bunkers while you face our ships. Ask yourselves, are they worth dying for? We'll wait for your answer. We're very patient hunters. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson. Humanity didn't just hunt their enemies. They systematically dismantled them, piece by piece, ally by ally, secret by secret. And they were just getting started. The end of the Galactic Council began not with a bang, but with a spreadsheet. Specifically, a comprehensive audit of every Council member's private accounts, voting records, and backdoor dealings for the past 3 centuries, broadcast simultaneously across every communications channel in known space. High Chancellor Zixanax's geometric patterns became so chaotic they nearly collapsed into a singularity. How did they access the eternal archives? Those records were quantum-locked. Oh, that's the funny part, Ambassador Cathil said, her mandibles forming what passed for a smirk among her species. They didn't hack it. They bought the access codes from your own security chief. Apparently humans understand something we don't. Everyone has a price. The revelations hit the galaxy like a supernova. The Council hadn't just been corrupt. They'd been systematically suppressing technological advancement among lesser species while hoarding innovations for themselves. The humans had merely been the latest target of a practice spanning millennia. In the intelligence archive, Pelthor and Krista watched in amazement as centuries of carefully maintained alliances crumbled in real time. The humans didn't even have to fire a shot, Krista observed, her crystalline form shimmering with something like admiration. They just showed everyone the truth and let natural consequences take their course. The Council's response was predictably tone-deaf. They declared the evidence fabricated and ordered their remaining military forces to crush any rebellion. Instead, they watched in horror as their own battleships began broadcasting confirmation of the humans' claims. Did you really think we hadn't infiltrated your crews? The human transmission was almost gentle. We've had agents in your fleets for months. Some of them are even human. Turns out we're pretty good at genetic modification too. The Dominion forces were the first to break. General Suzith, his cybernetic components sparking with rage, announced their withdrawal from the Council's command. We signed up to protect civilization, not to be the private army of corrupt bureaucrats. What followed was less a revolution and more a wholesale reorganization of galactic society. Species that had been deemed too primitive for advanced technology suddenly found themselves being offered partnership deals by human corporations. Trade routes that had been monopolized by council members for centuries were thrown open to free competition. But the real shock came from the emergence of unexpected allies. The Vraxian Collective, which had maintained its neutrality throughout the conflict, revealed that they'd been quietly working with humanity all along. "We saw this coming," Ambassador Vrax announced to the galaxy at large. "The humans didn't just want revenge, they wanted to reform a system that had grown stagnant under its own corruption. We chose to help shape that reform rather than resist it." In the council chamber, now occupied by human peacekeepers and representatives from formerly suppressed species, the final reckoning played out with almost theatrical timing. "Let's review your options," the human diplomatic representative said, looking remarkably comfortable in the Chancellor's former seat. "Option 1. Face trial for crimes against sapient rights, with evidence provided by your own archives. Option 2. Resign all positions, surrender your illegally acquired assets, and retire to a nice primitive world where you can contemplate the irony of your situation." High Chancellor Zixanax's patterns had stabilized into a defeated grey grid. "You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? All the hunting, the military strikes, they were just a distraction while you dismantled our power structure from within." "Oh no," the human replied with a predatory smile. "The hunting was very real. We just multitask well. Speaking of which, how many of your fellow council members have you noticed missing from this meeting?" The chamber erupted into chaos as the remaining council members realized several of their colleagues had quietly disappeared during the proceedings. The humans had been picking them off one by one, right up until the end. In the archives, Pelthor was finalizing his last report when a human analyst approached his station. "You know," the human said casually, "we've read your warning reports from the beginning. Very insightful stuff. How would you feel about a position in the new Galactic Intelligence Service? We're very interested in analysts who can see past their own species' biases." As former council members were led away to face justice and new alliances were forged between formerly oppressed species, the galaxy began to understand what the humans had actually been hunting all along. It was never just about revenge against pirates or punishing those who had attacked Earth. They had been hunting for something bigger, the chance to rebuild the galaxy into something better. And like everything else humans did, once they started hunting for that goal, they didn't stop until they achieved it. Ambassador Cathiel, watching the proceedings from her new position as representative of the reformed Cathiel Confederation, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "I tried to warn them about humans, never thought I'd end up thanking them instead." One standard cycle after the fall of the old council, the galaxy had changed in ways that would have been unimaginable to its former rulers. The humans, to everyone's surprise, didn't actually want to run everything. They just wanted to make sure nobody else could run it badly. The new Galactic Cooperative, as it was now called, operated on what humans called checks and balances, though several species had trouble with the metaphor since they had neither checks nor balances in their cultures. "Let me get this straight," a confused Drom Junior representative bubbled. "You orchestrated the complete downfall of galactic civilization just to install a better bureaucracy?" "Pretty much," the human administrator replied, feet propped up on what used to be the High Chancellor's sacred podium, though we prefer to call it aggressive quality control. The changes were sweeping. The former council chamber now hosted rotating representatives from all spacefaring species, with decisions made by consensus rather than arbitrary power rankings. Even more shocking, the humans had insisted on including representatives from pre-FTL civilizations in observer roles. "They're going to join us eventually," was the human explanation. "Better they know what they're getting into. Besides, some of them have fascinating ideas about quantum mechanics. Just because they can't travel faster than light doesn't mean they can't think faster than us." The former intelligence archive had been transformed into a public library of galactic knowledge. Pelthor, now serving as Chief of Transparency, a position the humans had invented just for him, watched in amazement as species freely shared technological innovations instead of hoarding them. "The humans have a saying," Krista remarked, her crystalline form glowing with amusement. "A rising tide lifts all boats." Though I'm still not sure what a tide is, or why boats are relevant to galactic politics, the most significant change was the establishment of what humans called the "Don't Be an Idiot" protocol. Any species that attempted to suppress, exploit, or unnecessarily attack another would find themselves facing not just humanity's wrath, but the combined response of the entire cooperative. "It's quite elegant, really," Ambassador Vrax explained to a gathering of new member species. "The humans took their talent for hunting down threats and turned it into a peacekeeping mechanism, though they do seem oddly disappointed when nobody misbehaves enough to trigger it." Trade flourished under the new system. The Cathil, their pirating days behind them, had become the galaxy's premier shipping security consultants. After all, their brochures read, "Who better to prevent piracy than reform pirates? Also, have you seen what humans do to pirates? We'd rather not go through that again." The former Dominion forces had been reorganized into a rapid response force for natural disasters and humanitarian crises. General Shith, now Admiral of Emergency Services, found he preferred saving lives to taking them, though he still occasionally twitched when humans suggested aggressive rescue operations. But perhaps the most telling change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. They were no longer seen as primitives to be conquered or threats to be contained. Instead, they had become something far more interesting, the species that had looked at a corrupt galactic order and decided to hunt it to extinction, only to replace it with something remarkably sensible. "We just have one question," a newly contacted civilization asked during their orientation. "Are all humans this intense about organizational reform?" The human representative grinned. "Oh, you should see us when we really care about something. This was just a hobby project." The galaxy collectively decided some questions were better left unasked. 10 cycles after the Great Reformation, the chamber that once housed the Galactic Council hosted a rather unusual ceremony. The last remaining pieces of the old regime, the High Chancellor's quantum-locked seal and the Eternal Archives master key, were being ceremonially decommissioned. Ambassador Cathil, her wings now showing signs of age, stood beside Ambassador Vrax and Pelthor as they watched the proceedings. The human representative was giving a speech that managed to be simultaneously diplomatic and utterly sarcastic. "And so we gather to commemorate the end of an era," the human announced, holding up the ancient symbols of power. "These artifacts represent thousands of years of careful planning, meticulous organization, and absolutely horrible decision-making." The assembled representatives, ranging from crystalline beings to quantum wavefronts to several species that hadn't even existed in the Council's registry, burst into appreciative laughter. "You know what the funniest part is?" Cathil clicked her mandibles softly. "If they had just apologized after that first pirate raid, none of this would have happened." Indeed, Vrax's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. They thought they were dealing with barbarians, but instead they found administrators with a vendetta. I'm still not sure which is more terrifying. Pelthor's tentacles waved in what had become his signature gesture of ironic acceptance. The galaxy learned 3 important lessons. Never underestimate humanity, never give them a reason to hunt you, and never, ever assume they'll stop at simple revenge when they can reorganize an entire civilization. The human speaker raised a glass in a final toast. "To the former council, thanks for giving us the excuse to fix everything. We'll take it from here." Somewhere in the galaxy, a pirate ship checked its sensors, saw a human vessel, and decided that today was a wonderful day to become a legitimate business enterprise.